Shabbat nikabela, Adodi vikra atala, Shabbat nikabela. We can all be seated, and I guess those of you who are online, I think we just went live, so Shabbat Shalom. If you're on YouTube or you're on templeshalom.com live, welcome, and we missed you for Kabbalat Shabbat, but you can join us for the rest of the service. We're going to go to page 144. Yitkada v'yitkada shemir haba, Yalma divrach Yerutev yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael, ba'agala, ba'agala, uv'izman ka'arivim eru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach, ve'alam olam me'almaya yitbarach, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yidroman v'yinaseh, Vitadar, vitale, vitalal, shemid, kudisha, berichu leila, min kover chata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechemata, dahamiran be'alma, v'imeru, amen. Page 146 is where the next section of our service begins, called Shema Uvirchoteha. For those of you who are joining us online, we're doing a little bit of learning about the Friday evening Kabbalat Shabbat service. And so you can't ask questions at home, but all the people here, there's about 150 people here. We're going to ask they're asking a few questions that we're learning. So, Shema Uvir Choteha, literally translated, the Shema and her blessings, because Shema is a feminine word. We have gender in Hebrew, like we don't have in English. We don't have a neuter in Hebrew, but we do in English. Goes everywhere from Baruch Hu all the way to right up to the Amidah. So, anybody have a question about any of the prayers that we have? We have Baruch Hu, we have our call to worship, Ma'ariv Aravim, our prayer of giving thanks for creation, Ahavar Rabbah, or excuse me, Ahavar Olam, Ahavar Rabbah in the morning, Ahavar Olam of giving thanks for Torah. We have Shema, which includes Haftarah and the paragraphs after it. We have the Ge'ulah, the prayer of redemption, that includes V'chamocha. We have Hashkivenu, our evening bedtime prayer, and we have V'shamru of Shabbat, and then that leads us into the Amidah. So anybody, question you want to ask about? Lynn's got a question about this section, go. Excellent. So for those online who can't hear the question, we heard that Shema is the single line of Shema, the two lines of Shema, or maybe it's Shema and V'hafta and the other paragraphs that come after it. And what is the Shema? Since this section is called the Shema and its blessings, or her blessings, and what is all of that? So the answer is and its blessings is the Baruch Hu and Ma'ariv Aravim and Ha'avad Olam and Hashkivenu and the Ge'ulah and all of that. So Shema is actually this full section. So here's the deal. Shema, where do we find Shema? Where does it come from? It's in the Torah. Where? I'll give you a hint. It's at the bottom of the page. If you're on the page of the Shema, it's at the bottom of the page. You can find it right there. It tells us that it comes from? Deuteronomy chapter 6, exactly. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 6 is where you find Shema. So, I'm going to quote from Deuteronomy chapter 6. Are you ready? You tell me when something seems off to you, because I'm going to now, in Hebrew, quote Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse, where does it begin? Verse 4. I'm going to say maybe verse 4 and verse 5. Okay, here we go. Ready? Here we go. I'm going to quote from the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning at verse 4, and you tell me when you think something doesn't seem exactly like it's supposed to be, like maybe in your prayer book or something. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshcha, v'chol moedecha. Go. Yeah, so that next line, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, praises God for his kingdom now and forever, not in the Torah. So there's a little bit of legend about why do we say this idea. Moses is up on Mount Sinai. The legend says this is all out of the Midrash. Moses is up on the mountain. Moses says, I'm going to learn this and bring it down. And God says, all right, here's the thing. You're going to say this sentence about the idea of one God. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen up, Shema, listen, hear, right? Hear, O Israel. Hear. Shema also means to obey. It also means to heed. So when we say Shema and we translate it as hear, O Israel, that's a bad translation. I mean, it's not a bad translation. It's an inadequate translation. It's a decent translation. It's not adequate because the word Shema literally means to hear, to heed, and to obey. And if we don't understand that whole concept, we can't get the rest of the sentence, which is Shema Yisrael, hear, heed, and obey, Israel, Jews, right? Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, this deity called Adonai, is our God. Adonai Echad, and that God is one. There's only one of that God, and the only one. It's singular. This God is singular in the universe. Other cultures worship other gods. They're not of the same stature, right? They're lowercase g gods. Our God is capital G God, all right? So while Moses is up on the mountain, and God says this to Moses, Moses goes, okay, I'm going to get Shema Yisrael, Echad, Shema Yisrael, what was the word? Oh, Echad, thanks. Shema Yisrael, Echad, Shema Yisrael. I'm going to memorize this. And then Moses hears some angels over there. And Moses says, what are they saying? They're saying, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Praises God's glorious kingdom now and forever. And Moses says, that's really beautiful. I want to say that too. And the angels go, no. That's ours. Shema, that's yours. Baruch Shem Kivod, ours. You don't get to say it. Moses goes, okay. Goes down the mountain. God told me this, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The angels, they say, Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Don't say it out loud, because it'll make the angels angry, and they can kill you. And you don't want the angels to kill you, because that would be bad. So only whisper that one, except we say it out loud one day a year on Yom Kippur, when the gates of the heavens are open, and the angels have no power to do anything like that at all, because God is watching at each moment with the gates of the heavens open. So, if you believe that story from the Midrash, that's why we whisper that second line. There's another interpretation of why we whisper that second line, which is this. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I'm going to whisper the next line because, quite frankly, who am I to have the audacity to add a sentence in the middle of an actual quote from the Torah? Because the next words in the Torah are V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, right? The beginning of that V'ahavta paragraph. It's not Baruch Shem Kavod. So as not to embarrass myself in front of God that I think I'm so great that I'm going to add words to God's words from the Torah, I will whisper those words because I don't want to be so boastful with those words that I, some mere mortal, am adding to God's words that come directly out of the Torah. So I'll say it quietly, except on Yom Kippur, when God forgives me for all kinds of things so I can say it out loud, because it's a beautiful sentiment, but I don't want to insult God by saying, I'm going to add this to your Torah. And so, are those one of those the real reasons? We don't know. But those are our two. The Midrash is a famous story. The other feels a bit more practical, right? A bit more realistic. And so this is the idea of why we add in this idea of adding in a sentence and whispering this sentence in this idea. But because V'ahavta is the next sentence in the Torah after Shema, it's one thing. It's not, there's the Shema and V'ahavta, right? Because Shema is part of one sentence. And then there's two other paragraphs, one out of the book of Numbers, another out of the book of Deuteronomy, right? They come in the Reform Movement prayer book, which we're holding in our hands tonight. You see the full first paragraph. You do not see any of the second paragraph, and you see the second half of the third paragraph. Why? Here's the answer. The second paragraph, if you look in our other prayer book that we use on Saturday mornings and during the week, the second paragraph actually says that if we follow all of God's rules, God will provide for us the rain in the rainy seasons, the early rain in the early rain season and the late rain in the late rain season, and there will be enough that it will make all of the plants grow, and it will make sure that there is enough feed all of us, as well as to feed all of our cattle and all of our sheep and all of our herds of everything. The early reformers in the 1830s in Germany, they were all very sophisticated at that time Orthodox rabbis, because there was no reform. They said, we are modern Jews. We are now of the modern intellectual German society, as Germans would say, right? We don't need agrarian references. If I were in the room with them in the 1830s when they had this discussion, I would have said, I understand that you are German intellectuals and you are sitting in an academy in the middle of Berlin or in Frankfurt or in some of these other places where they had some of these meetings. But I'm just going to ask, I'm just a simple rabbi from a little city called Colorado Springs. What do I know? But I'm just curious, do you eat bread? And if you do eat bread, American bread, German bread, French bread, I don't know what kind of bread you're going to eat, but if you eat bread, I'm just a simple rabbi, what do I know? But did someone grow the grain for you to eat that bread? Because if they did, I know that you're not the agrarian sitting here in your intellectual palace of Berlin, but someone somewhere grew the grain. So maybe we should be grateful and ask God to make sure the grain grows. But that would have been my question had I been with them. But they were very high intellectuals and decided we don't need agrarian references. Okay? Second, they rejected some of the things about the idea of messianism, that there would be a Messiah, and they rejected some of the mitzvot. And so the beginning of the third paragraph, of course, talks about the tzitzit, to remind you of the mitzvot that we're supposed to follow, but because some of those mitzvot lead to messianism and lead to other acts that we don't really believe in anymore because we're 1830s modern German intellectual rabbis, we're going to get rid of that too. But we do agree on the idea of really remembering the Exodus from Egypt. So we'll pick up paragraph number 3, where it starts to talk about the Exodus from Egypt. And so that's why they put together what is kind of the Reform Shema. The Reformed prayer book, some Reformed prayer books have had those extra paragraphs in them. There is a place in this one, I don't remember what page it is, where they have the first half of the third paragraph. But they did not include the second paragraph at all in this book. In there, we're going to bring back some tradition to bring us back to Hebrew, more traditional things. In this book, they didn't put the second paragraph, and the reason is because they didn't. I actually spoke with the editors of the book. With the rabbis who were the editors, they said, we just didn't feel that was an important enough paragraph for us to bring back, and so we didn't. But we did bring back the first half of this paragraph because Reformed Jews now do wear a talit on Saturday morning. It's a custom, and so we put that back in. But the agrarian references, we didn't put the agrarian references back in, except we did put one in another prayer, but that's a whole other case, but they didn't put it in here. So this is why the prayer is in the form it's in Mishkan Tefillah, but the full traditional, all 3 paragraphs, is in Sim Shalom. So this is how it was all put together. Yes? So that could be it too. So again, for people online, how much of the idea of not returning the second paragraph into the Siddur is that it's rarely in any synagogue said out loud. There are a couple of synagogues said out loud, but most synagogues don't say that paragraph out loud. It's done silently. That could be a piece as well, because there was an idea in the Reform movement, it's disappearing, but it's still kind of there, of like, if it's stuff we say silently, we don't need to say it at all. Because we believe in communal prayer and silent meditation time. That can be the Amidah, but we don't need all this silent prayer like we have on a Saturday morning here at all the various points in the service. It just all it does is it's dead air, basically, is the idea. So that could be a piece of it also. The other thing that the early reformers said is we want to get rid of repetition. If you look at the second half of the second paragraph, it says, and I'll translate it into English for you, bind them as a sign on your hand, make them frontlets in front of your eyes, put them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, teach them to your children. And the rabbi said that's repetitive, because we already have that in the first paragraph, right? Except that I disagree with them. Of course I do. Why do I disagree with them? Because let me give you the real translation of the second half of the second paragraph, which says this: bind them on y'all's hand, because I'm Southern, right? Bind them on y'all's hands and make them a sign between y'all's eyes. Put them on the doorpost of y'all's houses and on y'all's gates. Teach them to y'all's children. It's plural. The first one is singular, the second one is plural. Why is it important that we have both paragraphs? Because there's a individual, personal responsibility to do these things. Why do we put the second paragraph that has it in plural and it feels like a repetition? Because English doesn't have a plural you, except unless we're from the South and you say y'all, right? That one says we have a communal responsibility to do these things. So that's why we really should, in my opinion, read both of the paragraphs, because we're individually responsible and we are communally responsible for all of those things. So, a little melody from Stika Pick, who died last year in Israel, who wrote this particular melody. He was not a rabbi, he was not a cantor, he was a rock star. Had a whole bunch of top 10 hits. His daughter is still a really big star. He wrote several songs for Israel for the Eurovision competition. And on his album, I think it was 1977 or 1978, 3 years in a row, he won the Israeli equivalent of the Grammy for Best Male Rock Vocalist. And he played this on the piano when he wrote it. But so it became very popular in Israel and then transferred its way into American Jewish summer camps. That's how it came to America, because it came through Israelis coming to American summer camps, and it was a cool tune for song leaders to sing. And then all of a sudden it made its way into synagogues. This melody for Shema, that a rock star, not a religious guy, wrote. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Stika Pick's recording, by the way, of this at that point in the music, it becomes like this. But it's interesting how sometimes music comes to us from different places. Rockstar guy writes melody that Shema gets sung all over America. The next 6 hours of service is the Amidah. Well, actually, let's go to B'Shamar. We'll go to B'Shamar, which is on page. We'll sing another prayer that's from this section of our service. We'll go to Shema. Actually, we'll chant V'ahavta we'll do the rest of it since it's there. Ve'ahavta 154. Eit Adonai Elohecha. B'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam le'ot al yadecha V'hayu totafot be'ininecha, uchtavtam amzuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Before we go to the second half of the third paragraph, if you'll turn to page 236, because here's the place where they actually give us in this prayer book the full third paragraph. We don't get the second paragraph, but we get the full third paragraph. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei v'gdehem ledorotam V'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf b'ti'il techelet v'haya lechem letzitzit uritem oto uzechartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem. And here's where the Reform movement picked up the rest of the paragraph, because it's about redemption from Egypt. Leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'yot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem. Amen. Let's go to page 162. We'll sing the words of Vishamru. Since we were talking about Moses being up on the mountain with Shema, Moses was up on the mountain with the words of Vishamru as well. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dor tamid olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dor tamid olam. V'nivei b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dor tamid olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dor tamid olam. U'v'yom ha'sheni Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Amidah begins on page 164 with our Zimun, our meditation, and it goes through page 180 and 181 in English. Before we stand up, and we'll do a couple of first paragraphs together, and we'll pray some silently after that. Before we do, between page 100, what did you say, 158? 164 and 180 and 181. Any questions about any of the various paragraphs that make up the evening Amidah of Shabbat? Yes. Right, so is this the section where we do some bowing? So yes, it is. So let's talk a little bit about prayer, what I like to call the choreography of prayer. Because the idea is, I call it choreography because my house likes Broadway, but I was supposed to really call it, if we want to kind of get technical and kind of things, the embodiment of prayer. The idea is that we need to pray with not just our words, and not just our minds, and not just our hearts and our souls, but with all of who we are, including our bodies. And so we have moments where we stand before God. We have moments where we bow before God. And if we read the Hebrew and actually followed what the Hebrew says, which we usually don't do, v'hishtachavu, which means to bow down, but it doesn't really mean to bow. It really means to prostrate, right? It means to bow down all the way down to the ground, which we don't do, right? We do it on, you'll see it on the high holidays, right? Here at Temple Shalom, the custom is it's just the rabbi and the cantor who do it. In some synagogues, you'll see more than just the rabbi and the cantor do it. In fact, if you were in any synagogue that I've ever been in for pretty much my entire life since I'm about 10 years old, I bow all the way down to the ground during the Great Aleinu on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, okay? So in some of the synagogues I've been in, people look and they're like, what is that dude doing? I thought only the rabbi does that. But that's what the words say. The Great Aleinu, we bow all the way to the ground because that's what the word, V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim, right? In Aleinu, right? V'anachnu, and we. Korim, bend. That's what korim means, to bend your knee. U'mishtachavim, which means, and we bow down all the way down to the ground. We prostrate ourselves, okay? And that's what the word means. But we don't usually do that. But the idea is that we embody prayer, right? When in the Amidah, we see some people who go like this all the time, right? In Yiddish, we call it shucheling, right? They shuchel, right? Why do you shuchel, right? Hey, I'm mumbling the words that I'm really actually saying in Hebrew, but it comes out like it sounds like I'm mumbling right now, because I'm shucheling during the Amidah, right? Why are we doing this? Yeah, it keeps us in a rhythm, and why do you want to be in a rhythm? We get ourselves kind of into a rhythmic, into a trance, into a rhythm, and it kind of helps bring the words out for us, and it kind of gives us into the rhythm of the prayer. And so we do this. So at the beginning, we bow, Baruch, right? Baruch ben Atah Adonai. We do it in the first paragraph, and then we do it all the way in the middle. We do Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach. I give thanks to you. So at the beginning of the prayer, in the middle at I give thanks, and I'm going to bow as I give thanks. And then at the very, very end, we're going to bow because we bowed bringing ourselves into the prayer. We're going to bow bringing ourselves out of the prayer at the very end of the prayer. And the idea being that if we can embody our prayer, if we can take the words, there's the idea of keva and kavana. Do we all know those words, right? Keva, fixed. Likboa mezuzah is the prayer you say to put a mezuzah on your door. To affix. Keva and likboa. I know it doesn't sound the same, but B and V, bet and vet, same letter, right? So keva means fixed. It's the fixed prayer. It's the prayer that's in the book. Are you fulfilling a commitment to prayer if you read the words in the book and you don't mean them and you're not thinking about them? The answer is yes, you are. You are. Because you're fulfilling the commandment to say those prayers, right? You're fulfilling the commandment of prayer. Are you doing it to the highest level that you can do it? No. But you are fulfilling a dictate about prayer by reciting the words. Kavanah comes from this word kivun, which literally, its origins are from, there's an idea that the sunlight, it comes from a passage in Song of Songs, that sunlight comes through the window like an arrow heading toward a target. And it uses this word kivun, which is kivun, kavanah, right? So like an arrow hitting a target. So kavanah, we usually translate it as intention, but the idea is that what is intention? It's aiming your heart like you would aim an arrow, and the target is God. So your heart, your soul, your intention, your prayer is the arrow. The target is God. You're aiming it at God. That's what intention means. So if you do that, are you doing prayer correctly? Yeah. Yo, God, thanks for everything. You're a cool dude. Is that a proper prayer? It's not the format we might like for prayer to be in, but if the person who says that has a deep intention and really is like something really special happened, and they're really from within their heart shouting those words out because something spectacular happened, and they're truly from deep down in their heart, deep in their soul, grateful to God for that thing that happened, yeah, it's not the format we would probably say would be the better format. But there's something about the kavanah of aiming their heart and soul and intention toward God. If we can take the two and put them together, that's when we reach the heights of prayer. Put those two things together. And so the bending and bowing is it serves as a reminder to us, I think. I don't think God cares if we bow. I really don't. I don't think God cares if we bow. We have all kinds of places in the books of the prophets where God says, I don't need your sacrifices. I don't need your prayers. I need you to go feed hungry people. I need you to go do righteousness and goodness in the world. That's what I want. It's in Isaiah, it's in Jeremiah, it's in Ezekiel, it's in some of the minor prophets as well, the 12 minor prophets, this whole idea. So it leads me to say, God doesn't care if we bow at the beginning of this prayer, the end of this prayer, the middle of this prayer. So why should we bow? God doesn't need us to bow. So why do we bow? I need me to bow. I need me to bow so that I'm reminded of what I'm doing when I say this prayer. I need the reminder that I'm standing in front of God. I need the reminder that I humble myself before God. God already knows. So God doesn't need me to bow. I need me to bow so that I know why I'm saying these prayers. And if I do this bowing at the beginning and in the middle and at the end, I remind myself of this idea that I'm humbling myself before God when I say these words. So this is our idea of bowing, and Baruch is a great place to bow because the word Baruch means blessed and the word Berech means knee. So blessing and knee, bending and knee is kind of they're related to each other. Carolyn. Right, so in the second paragraph, Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh ha-kol, or in the morning, in the traditional version, mechayeh ha-metim, right, we have that. You don't bow there. We have lots of people at Temple Shalom and every synagogue around the world who bow there. I will tell you that they are bowing at the incorrect time. They think they're doing the correct thing, and what you should do is on Shabbat run up to them and say, "Don't bow!" No, of course you shouldn't do that. Because we don't want to, because what would that be? It would be embarrassing someone in the middle of prayer. We don't want to embarrass someone in the middle of prayer. So we let them bow, and maybe afterwards, say, by the way, just privately want to let you know, don't know if you know, but the tradition is that you only bow during that first paragraph, at Modim in the middle, and when you say Oseh Shalom and you're leaving the Amidah at the very end, we don't bow at the end. And as a matter of fact, there's a thing at some Reform movement Jewish summer camps. It annoys me that the kids do this, but at some of the Reform movement summer camps, they go like this. Please don't bow. Oh, no. No, they go, V'ne'ema anata lachayot hakol. Please don't bow. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh. Yeah, and so they actually say, please don't bow in the middle of their prayer. And I'm like, that's really not a good way to, I know it's cute at camp, but they bring it back to their synagogue. And then it's like, and they do it in their synagogue. And so so these kids are like, what was the one? I'm like, I got to sing the whole thing to myself now, but they B'ne'ema anata lachayot hakol. And then, like in the back of the synagogue, there's like 10 kids from camp. I saw this in a synagogue. V'ne'ema anata lachayot hakol. Please don't bow. And the whole congregation turned around and went, what? Because they didn't realize that that's like a cute thing at camp to learn with, but not for here. So, one last thing, and then we'll say the Amidah together. Because if we bowed every time we said Baruch atah Adonai, we would walk around bowing all the time. But the idea is this. The Amidah is a section of the service. We're going to enter the palace, right? What am I going to do when I walk into the palace and the king is there? I'm going to bow. I'm going to praise the king. I'm going to ask the king for things. And then I'm going to thank the king for things. And when I say thank you to the king, what am I going to do? I'm going to bow in front of the king. And then when I leave the king, what am I going to do? I'm going to bow. So those would be the 3 times when I bow in front of the king. When I enter into the palace with the king, when I say thank you to the king, and when I depart from the palace of the king. And so that's the structure of the Amidah, is as if I'm walking into God's palace. I'm going to bow before God. I praise God. I ask for things during the week, 13 things on Shabbat for a peaceful Shabbat. And then I say thank you, Modim anachnu lach. I give thanks to you. Begins the thank you section. I bow for the thank you. And then at the very end, Oseh Shalom, I back up and I bow as I'm doing that. So that's the principle. We don't bow for everything. We bow as we enter the palace. We bow to say thank you, and we bow to leave the palace. And that's the idea, as if we're standing in God's palace. And so why don't we do that? We'll all stand. And we'll go to, we'll sing the Zimun together on page 164. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufiyadi tilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Ula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magin. Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Chodim, U'matir Asurim, Umekayem emunato b'shenei afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umido melach melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata lachayot hakol Baruch ata Adonai mechayeh hakol ata kadosh v'shivcha kadosh Ukedoshim b'chol yom yahalelu chasela Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. We'll continue silently. Please be seated when you're finished. Page 176. Since we were talking about that prayer, Modim Anachnu Lach, the one that says, we give thanks to you, O God, that you are Adonai our God, the God of our ancestors, for always you are the rock of our life and the shield of our salvation. You are the one for us in every generation. They sing those words, page 176. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu v'imoteinu le'olam va'ed. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu v'imoteinu le'olam va'ed. Sur chayeinu Magen Yisheinu Atahu Lidor Vador Atahu Lidor Vador. We can turn to page 371. We'll think of those who are in need of healing and ask God to bring Refuah Shlema, complete healing, to Brian Zabel, Ruvain Ben Zipporah, Ellen McIntosh, Faye Green, Malka Bat Hillel Halevi, Harriet Neal, Shmuel Ben Yosef, Chris Kaplan, Genindel Bat Sima, Azi Rachbani, Beth Maxwell, Avram Ben Meir, Tova Bat Rasha, Sue Laughlin, Lee Rosser, Howard Messerman, Howard Chook, the Elledge family, Eleanor Siegelman, David Greenberg, Risha Chana Bat Ezra, and Robert Charles Ozick. Are there any other names anyone has here, or if you have names at home for those who are in need of healing? We'll say a blessing, asking for them to have Refuah Shlema, complete healing. Min hashamayim, from the heavens, may it come quickly. Mishevera avoteinu mikor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishevera imoteinu mikor habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with Refuah Shlema, the renewal of life, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We'll rise for Aleinu, page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gdula liyotzeh breishi, shelo asanu kugoye ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim veyoser haaretz umoshav yikaro bashamayim ima'al ushchinatu zo v'gofeh meheromim hu Eloheinu einod emet malkeinu efes ulato kakatu b'torato yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mima'al ve'al ha'aretz mitachat ein od The middle of 590. Ki hamalchut shelcha hi olam yatimloch bechavod. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'emar vaya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu ye Adonai echad. Ushemo echad. Ushemo echad. We can be seated. You can turn your seat over to page 598. As we recall the memories in our yard sites of Francis Borshon, Hyman Kraft, Irvin Rinsky, Nathan Mendel, Robert Lewis, Robert Rackless, Louis Mark, Rachel Borowski, Rachel Sachs, Regina Siegel, Sharon Bloom, Daniel DeJour Lufrani, Maury Morrison, Michelle Penny, Morris Miller, Mortimer Goldberg, Robert Bergman, Alexander Kaplan, Louis Kaplan, David Podbros, Mildred Spaeth, Sarah Diamond, Sidney Rosenthal, Ann Goldberg, Barbara Grossman, Mary Ellen Stroop, Sam Ganetsky, Talma Ben Naim Asif, Fanny Polikoff, and Sandra Brock. We also note the passing last night of Ellen McIntosh, mother of Pam Gerfine. Do we have any other yard sites anyone's observing? Thank you. And for those of you at home, if you're observing your yard site, you can rise as well. We ask mourners to rise and those whose custom it is to stand with them. As on page 598, we sanctify God's name in their memory. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah ve'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen v'hei shmei Rabbah mivarach la'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vit hadar, vit ale, vit halal, shemei dukudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Huya oseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. V'imru amen. We can all be seated. Carolyn, do you have our announcements? A few announcements. Lots of important things coming up in the next couple of weeks. There's a holiday in like 3 weeks or something. Something with flatbread. Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
And that's on a few weeks from now. So
Yeah, no, I don't
that's a
think
different flatbread.
that's a different holiday that
flatbread.
only they celebrate in the
Huh?
United States.
Labor Day. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a
think
lot of labor, I can tell you.
Pizza on Labor Day, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the flatbread.
Thank you all for joining us this Erev Shabbat for our service. And if you're new or visiting,
Then you're
Let's-
invisible because
you're
I don't know where you are.
we're not here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Rabbi, for this evening. It's very interesting. We've learned a lot.
I hope so.
I think we have.
I hope it enhances your prayer a little bit.
It will. Our film series continues to be an outstanding series with a third offering.
Can you guys not hear her?
The third offering, The Narrow Bridge.
I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to do that.
And then I'm going to stand back. And
Now you have to stand closer so they can hear you.
closer? Can you hear me? You couldn't hear me before? I
No.
called the cows across 400 acres. Okay. The film series continues. Third offering, The Narrow Bridge, is Sunday, March 19th.
2 days from now.
Yeah, 2 days, not tomorrow. 2 days. Do I have the right one? Yes. The program starts at 4:30. It's $10 to get you into the film and access to a brief discussion. Wine and cheese reception will follow for the film lovers. Thanks go to all the sponsors, the Mensches, the Mavens, and the participants for contributing, and the program committee members for bringing these fine films to the temple. After the film on Sunday, an event coming up is the March installment of our Fourth Friday Shabbat dinner and service. That's the 24th of March. The dinner starts at 5:30. Just to put a plug in for the April installment of the Fourth Friday, we're going to be celebrating Israel's 75th anniversary with an Israeli dinner main course of falafel. And you should sign up to bring something wonderful and to come. A side salad that with an Israeli film theme would be wonderful. Also, I believe on Sunday is the play Indecent, which sounds indecent, but it's Jewish play. You want to explain that a little more?
It's a Jewish play about the Yiddish theater and the story of a play by the name of God of Vengeance, which was performed in Europe in the 1920s, and it traces 30 years of the history of that play and incidents that happened with it in Europe and in America. And after the play, the director, Max Schulman, who's a professor at UCCS, Max and I will have a discussion about Jewish themes and about the Yiddish theater. The show begins at 4 o'clock in the Dusty Lou Bon Vivant Theater, which is the Black Box Theater at the Ent Center on Nevada.
So, you have a choice of
It's almost sold out. There's only a few tickets left. So if you want to go, now is the time to get your tickets.
Yes, and so you've got a choice, the film, which is wonderful, or the play, which is also wonderful. Hard choice. So, spring break is March 26th through the 31st at Temple Shalom. There will be no religious school or preschool. Pesach Fun begins Saturday, April 1st at the Chocolate Seder. If you're a chocolate fan, starts at 7 o'clock. You'll never believe how much fun you can have learning about Pesach. Members, be sure to log in to Temple Shalom when you register to receive member pricing. On the 8th of Saturday the 8th from 1 to 2, a 10-week class in chanting Torah and Torah with Robert Footlick as the facilitator will begin. Prerequisite is that you are fairly proficient in reading Hebrew and will agree to participate as a reader of Torah and Torah when you have successfully completed the course. There are a limited number of slots in this class, so go right now to tomorrow evening, to templeshalom.com for more information and sign up on the class page as soon as you can. And I know you guys are all proficient, right? I'm not, but I do it anyway. If you know any temple members who are ill, hospitalized, or suffering from a loss, please contact the temple office so we can be sure to provide encouragement and support. Thanks to Temple Shalom and whoever else brought food. If you want to eat it, it's back there. You good?
All right.
We good?
We're good.
We're good. Shabbat
And-
Shalom. Anybody questions? Answers? I can make stuff up.
And tomorrow morning after service is another one of our Talmud study sessions. So if you want to study Talmud, first and third Saturday of the month at 1 o'clock at the after services, we study a little Talmud. It's Masechet Brachot is what we're studying. 625 is not. It's not 6:25 p.m. It's page 625. That's where we want to be. Do we have a question about 6:25? Go. We'll take a question for the section of service. So, are there different traditions in closing prayers and why don't allow instead of something else? In the traditional Friday evening service, Kaddish Tom, Mourner's Kaddish, we're done. But there became a tradition in Europe of the idea that maybe we should close our Shabbat out with music. Frankly, I think it really came out of the idea that the churches of Europe close out their services with music, and so we should close out our services with music. But like on a Friday night, it's not there's no ancient tradition of a piece of music to end the service. Saturday morning, Adon Olam, Shmuel ibn Gabirol is supposedly the guy who wrote Adon Olam. It's the total wrong time period, so he didn't write it, but someone else did. And so this idea of Adon Olam got added into the Siddur sometime, probably in the Middle Ages, but we don't know exactly when, as if like a closing statement to the idea. If you look at the very end, the very last paragraph, right? Beyado afkid ruchi. I appoint into your hand my soul. Okay? I know, how do they translate it? Into your hands I entrust my spirit. Literally, I am appointing into your hand, beyado, into your hand, afkid, I will appoint my soul. The idea that now that I've finished praying, I'm going to praise you, which is what all the other paragraphs do, right? And now that I've praised you, I'm going to appoint that my soul will be under your protection, and hopefully all the praying that I've done on this day will lead you that way. And that's kind of how this became. Are there other, for Friday night, there are Reform synagogues all over the world who pick a piece of music and sing it at the end of the night, anything that's kind of something that tied into the rabbi's sermon, something that the people in the community like, anything. On Saturday morning, Adon Olam's kind of become the traditional thing for the closing because of this idea of we praised you, we read your Torah, now I entrust all of my soul into your hand. And it became this closing hymn that became on Saturday mornings. And I just wanted to, I thought we'd do it, sing it tonight because I'm going to give you some sound there. There we go. So, because I like the composer. I don't know, share my life, tearing cold, continuing running my soul, but that's so cold as I may land to morning down. They are parade, looked up gold, if I don't look around. online, we'll see you soon. Shabbat Shalom. The rest of us will make a little Kiddush and Motzi together. I know the, oh, wait.